So, Vince, let's move on to the final part of this breakdown, and that is just kind of taking these two things and put them in together, and you come up with your scoring offense. And for all of Notre Dame's issues last year, they were a pretty decent scoring offense team. But when you look at these numbers over here, right, they're very comparable. Overall numbers are very comparable. Notre Dame finished 30th in scoring offense, Toledo 36th in scoring defense. Notre Dame finished 26th in yards per game, 34th in yards per play. Toledo was 36th and 34th on defense. Neither of them were worth a darn in the red zone, and they were both great on third down. It's almost like they were almost identical teams last year as far as this particular matchup. Now, again, Notre Dame did that against a schedule that had Clemson twice, had Alabama, had Boston College, and North Carolina and teams like that, right? And Toledo's was a MAC team, but Toledo also has MAC players.
Right, exactly.
Right? So it's not like they were a Ohio State playing against a bunch of MAC teams. So
right.
And then when you also factor in how bad they were in all these areas the year before. Their numbers the year before were really bad. Like I said, they finished they finished 36 in scoring defense last season. In 2019, they finished 101st.
Whew.
Right, gave up 32.2 points per game. They finished 36 last year in total defense. In 2019, they finished 123rd. They gave up 470. That's 100. It's close, 130.
Okay.
They finished 123rd the year before in total defense. In yards per game, yards per play, they finished 34th last year. They finished 120th the year before. So I just want to point this out because what Vince Karras did in one season with no offseason is a tremendous job. And it may not manifest itself on Saturday against Notre Dame, but the guy's done a great job, and I feel like we need to give credit where credit is due because Vince, that is a huge turnaround.
Absolutely.
That's a bigger turnaround. That's as big of a turnaround as what Mike Elko did in 2017, replacing Brian Van Gorder.
Right.
And he had Jerry Tillery and Drew Tranquil and, all these NFL players to work with. I think that I just want to give credit to, I respect good coaches. And
sure.
Jason Candle's a good coach, and he made a great hire when he went. Because Vince Karras was living a good life, at Mount Union. Winning championships all the time, making good money there. He had a good life, can get any recruit he wanted in the state of Ohio. He was living a good life. He also took a leap, and it certainly rewarded itself in year one. No question about it. So, Ben, of course, he learned from a legend his whole life, watching his dad coach all those years.
Doesn't hurt.
So, but overall, the statistics are similar. So if we're just looking at on paper on this matchup, Vince, then yeah, it's a very close matchup.
It is.
But again, This is last year's numbers. I think Toledo's going to be even better this year on defense. I do. But I think Notre Dame's going to be even better on offense. And I think that's the part of this that's going to be interesting is can Toledo keep Notre Dame's points down enough to make this a competitive second half game? That's going to be the interesting thing. And that's not really something Toledo has done in past years. What we don't know about Vince Karras is how's he going to do against a Power 5 team. They haven't had a great level of success in these matchups in the past. They lost by 2 touchdowns to Kentucky in 2019. They lost to Miami by 25 in 2018, lost to Fresno State by 22 that year as well. They haven't been super competitive under Jason Candle against those Power 5 teams. Lost to Miami 52-30 in 2017. Lost to App State in a bowl game 34-0. So they haven't really been competitive in these types of matchups. This is his first chance, in my opinion, to kind of have that. Okay, hey, we are a different program, and it's showing now against Power 5 teams. That's going to make this an interesting matchup. But I think in the end of the day, Notre Dame's got the advantage. Statistically, It's not a huge advantage, though, Vince. It really isn't. But I think when you look at the personnel and you talk about who Notre Dame had to play compared to who Toledo had to play, there's a pretty difference.
Well, and yeah, on paper it's even, but I am very interested to see what Notre Dame does from a points scoring standpoint. Putting up 41, against Florida State, I think was good, and I feel like they left 2 touchdowns out there at least. And so, if Notre Dame is a little bit more, fundamentally strong in some of their areas. If they're catching balls they should catch, if they are completing drives that they should complete. I'm interested to see what this looks like, against Toledo, and the other thing is, am I worried about Notre Dame losing this game? No, especially from an offensive standpoint. I am not worried at all. What I want to see is Notre Dame take care of business and put a team like this away offensively. You know what I mean? Put those points on the board. Hey, you get an 18-point lead. It's not time to take your foot off the gas. It's time to continue to run your offense and do your thing. You could sprinkle in a couple of twos. You can do some things offensively. That's fine. But I think you still need to run your offense, and establish the run game. That's fine. But know who you are. Stay with your identity. I think Notre Dame will do that. I just want to see, kind of what this point-scoring offense can be moving forward. So, yeah, of course it's advantage Notre Dame, but things that we're definitely going to be keeping our eye on.
For me, when I look at this matchup, Vince, I see a Notre Dame offense that number one was 2 for 2 on touchdowns. They got in the red zone twice, got touchdowns both times. That's a positive, right? That's something they didn't do last year. We also saw a team that took a step back on third down. They went 6 of 17 on third down, right? That's 35.3%. That's a big drop off from last year. Again, one game. There were some drops on third down that caused that. There were some O-line issues on third downs that caused that. One third down failed because Jarrett Patterson snapped the ball too soon and too high for Jack Cohn, right? I mean, so there was a lot of sloppy mistakes that are game one mistakes. They're going to have to clean that up. The thing that, to me, that when I look at this game, for all the talk about how Notre Dame barely survived Florida State, Notre Dame was up 38-20 at one point in time, and that included the fact that their first 4 drives got into Florida State territory and they got 1 touchdown.
Yeah. Right.
Those are the things I want to see this game. Those are the areas where, yes, the numbers were good, but if you're a coach and you're saying, yeah, the numbers were good, but can we be better? And in this instance, they can be. You've got to finish off those drives. You've got to move the ball, get the ball into Toledo territory, and then get points. When you cross mid, I mean, that's how any offense should have that. Once we cross midfield, we're getting points. Right,
absolutely.
We're flat out getting points.
Absolutely.
Notre Dame missed those opportunities on Toledo. That's an area where I do think we can see improvement. Even though a good 41 points is great and 38 in regulation against a what I think is going to end up being a pretty decent Florida State team, a team that's going to go to a bowl game, an improved team. I think Notre Dame made them look a little better than they are.
I agree with that.
But Florida State battled their butts off in that game.
They did. Look, they battled. They absolutely wanted it more than Notre Dame.
They weren't afraid of Notre Dame. And that says a lot about what he's brought this program. And they also didn't think that, hey, we're Florida State. We deserve, we're going to go out there and you're going to fear it. No, they said we got to earn their respect. And they went out and earned it.
Absolutely.
They're just not as good as Notre Dame is right now. But
the score of what it was at the end of regulation, right? It's a tie game. Those were self-inflicted wounds by Notre Dame. They were self-inflicted wounds. And, there's that high school documentary on Netflix that I watched, and the guy gets up before every game and he says, who can beat the Wildcats? And they're like, the Wildcats. Like, that's what it was for Notre Dame. Who could beat Notre Dame that night? Notre Dame is the answer to that question. It wasn't Florida State. Now, I'm not taking anything away from what Florida State did because they wanted it more. They played hard. Hard. But that game should not have been where it was because of the self-inflicted wounds by Notre Dame.
That's also where Notre Dame can say, okay, game 2, be better.
Right.
And I think that's the encouraging thing for me, Vince. As I look at it, I see 41 points. I see four over 430 total yards. I see decent yards per play. 6.2 is a decent. It's not great. It's not terrible. I mean, 6.2 last year would have ranked you 34th in the country. So it's good. But when you consider that 6.2 ranking came with a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of negatives, tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, I believe is what they said. I think that's I look and say, hey, look, I'm feeling good about where they're headed, right? If they can clean this stuff up. But this is where you got to start cleaning it up, right? You've got game 2, you're at home, you got to clean that stuff up. So, be better on third down. When you cross midfield, have that mentality of, hey, here we go. We got to be hungry. We can sniff. It's like you sniff the end zone at that point in time. You got to really turn that look, oh, I want to get in there now. And I don't think they had that enough on Saturday. Now, once they got in the red zone, you could tell they really wanted it, and they ran one in, powered one in, had another one was a little sloppier, but they got it done. So that's areas where I think they can improve. if we see them just relying, it was great. It was great that they were able to make the big plays for touchdowns. That was great. But they need to show that they can put a nice long drive together too. That's what we didn't really see a lot of from Notre Dame. So good for the big plays. Now let's get a little bit more efficiency going with it. Because when your cornerback average is over 10.5 yards per attempt, and you only average 6.2 yards per play as a team, which is where Notre Dame was this past week. I'm going to actually look it up here real quick. It was 6.16, so 6.2. I was correct. That means you were really inefficient in other areas. And that's what we saw from Notre Dame against Toledo. So I think that's an area where, for me, I look at this and I say, if they can clean that stuff up, be a little bit more efficient in the run game. The run game doesn't have to look like it did last year. It just has to be something teams have to respect. It doesn't have to be 2017, 2020. Just be efficient, make teams respect it. And then that's going to continue to allow your pass game to thrive, which then is in turn going to make your run game even more effective because teams can't play the box. So clean that stuff up. You cross midfield, get points. Mm-hmm. You get into the red zone, get 6. Those are the things that we need to see, and I think that's why that's where Notre Dame needs to improve. Again, advantage Notre Dame for all the reasons you mentioned, but those are the things that I want to see to say, hey, I'm going to evaluate this part of the game with a good grade. I didn't necessarily give them a great grade on scoring offense against Florida State because, yes, they ended up with 41 points, but they missed so many opportunities. We can talk about the defense all we want. The defense should have done this and should have done that. If the offense capitalizes on its early opportunity, remember the defense gave them the ball at midfield or inside the 50-yard line twice in the first quarter, right? And they got 0 points out of those 2 drives. Okay, that it should have been 21-0 before Florida State had a chance to breathe, or at least 21-7 had a chance to breathe.
Absolutely.
That's on the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the offense picked the defense up when the defense started struggling, and the defense made some stops late, gave the offense a chance to win it. Love all that, right? And that includes holding Florida State to a field goal in the end of regulation, not giving up a touchdown to lose. Means getting that stop in overtime. Those are all good. But so there's certainly areas where the offense can improve and should improve. And I want to see that faster start. That's the thing for me. Start faster.
When we talked about that as one of our keys to the game in the first game, right?
And they didn't do it.
They did not do it.
Exactly. The fact that they missed on all those opportunities to get points allowed Florida State. And again, what would Florida State's team have done if Notre Dame takes their first 3 drives and puts points on the board?
Right. It's a completely different game plan at that point. It has to be because now you're playing catch up, right? And now you're asking Jordan Travis to be a passer, and that's what Notre Dame would have wanted.
Right. So that.